Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another reading video. We are back with another installment of Carmilla. We have gone through the first 4 chapters of this one, so if you've missed that and you want to catch up before we dive into the next chapters, I will have that linked up in a card. I forget which side it is on every time. But I'll have a playlist with the earlier chapters linked up in a card so you can catch up with us. Today we are going to be reading chapters 5 through 7. Getting a little further into our book here. We are, I think, getting into the real meat of it. Should be nice and exciting. This will be a soft-spoken reading video, so nice and relaxing. If that sounds like your cup of tea, I hope you will stick around and listen along with me as I get into the book. If not, I'll see you in another video. Alright, let us get started. Chapter 5. A Wonderful Likeness. That evening there arrived from Graz the grave, dark-faced son of a picture cleaner, with a horse and cart laden with 2 large packing cases, having many pictures in each. It was a journey of 10 leagues, and whenever a messenger arrived at the manor house from our little capital, we would crowd about him in the hall to hear the news. This arrival created quite a sensation in our secluded quarters. The cases remained in the hall, and the messenger was taken charge of by the servants until he had eaten his supper. Then, with assistance, and armed with hammer, ripping chisel, and turnscrew, he met us in the hall, where we had assembled to witness the unpacking of the cases. Carmilla sat, looking listlessly on, while the old pictures, nearly all portraits that had undergone the process of renovation, were brought to light. My mother was of an old Hungarian family, and most of these pictures, which were about to be restored to their places, had come to us through her. My father had a list in his hand, from which he read as the artist rummaged out the corresponding numbers. I don't know that the pictures were very good, but they were, undoubtedly, very old, and some of them very curious also. They had, for the most part, the merit of being now seen by me for the first time, for the smoke and dust of time had all but obliterated them. "There is a picture I have not seen yet," said my father. "In one corner, at the top of it, is the name, as well as I could read, Marcia Karnstein, and the date 1698. I am curious to see how it has turned out." I remembered it. It was a small picture, about 1.5 feet high, and nearly square, without a frame, but it was so blackened by age that I could not make it out. The artist now produced it with evident pride. It was quite beautiful and startling. It seemed to live. And it was the effigy of Carmilla. "Carmilla, dear, here is an absolute miracle. Here you are, living, smiling, ready to speak, in this picture. Isn't it beautiful, Papa? And see, even the little mole on her throat." My father laughed and said, "Certainly, it is a wonderful likeness." But he looked away, and to my surprise seemed but little struck by it. He went on talking to the picture cleaner, who was also something of an artist, and discoursed with intelligence about the portraits and other works that his art had just brought into light and colour, while I was more and more lost in wonder the more I looked at the picture. "Will you let me hang this picture in my room, Papa?" I asked. "Certainly, dear," said he, smiling. "I'm very glad you think it is so like. It must be prettier even than I thought it, if it is." The young lady did not acknowledge this pretty speech, did not seem to hear it. She was leaning back in her seat, her fine eyes under their long lashes gazing on me in contemplation. She smiled in a kind of rapture. "And now you can read quite plainly the name that is written in the corner," I said. "It is not Marcia. It looks as if it was done in gold. The name is Mircalla, Countess Karnstein. And there's a little coronet over and underneath, A.D. 1698. I am descended from the Karnsteins. That is, Mamma was." "Ah, "Ah," said the lady languidly. "So am I think. Of very long descent, very ancient. Are there any Karnsteins living now?" "None who bear the name, I believe. The family were ruined, I believe, in some civil wars long ago, but the ruins of the castle are only about 3 miles away." "How interesting," she said languidly. "But see what beautiful moonlight." She glanced through the hall door, which stood a little open. "Suppose you take a little ramble round the court and look down at the road and river." "It is so like the night you came to us," I said. She sighed, smiling. Then she rose, and, each with an arm about the other's waist, we walked out upon the pavement. In silence, slowly, we walked down to the drawbridge, where the beautiful landscape opened before us. "And so you were thinking of the night I came here?" she almost whispered. "Are you glad I came?" "Delighted, dear Carmilla," I answered. "And you asked for the picture you think like me, to hang in your room," she murmured with a sigh, as she drew her arm closer about my waist and let her pretty head sink upon my shoulder. "How romantic you are, Carmilla," I said. "Whenever you tell me your story, it will be made up chiefly of some one great romance." She kissed me silently. "I am sure, Carmilla, you have been in love, that there is, at this moment, an affair of the heart going on." "I have been in love with no one, and never shall," she whispered, "unless it should be with you." How beautiful she looked in the moonlight. Shy and strange was the look with which she quickly hid her face in my neck and hair, with tumultuous sighs that almost turned to sobs. She pressed in mine a hand that trembled. Her soft cheek was glowing against my own. "Darling, darling," she murmured, "I live in you, and you would die for me. I love you so." I started from her. She was gazing on me with eyes from which all fire, all meaning had flown. Her face was colorless and apathetic. "Is there a chill in the air, dear?" she said drowsily. "I almost shiver. Have I been dreaming? Let us come in. Come in." "You look ill, Carmilla. A little faint. You certainly must take some wine," I said. "Yes, I will. I'm better now. I shall be quite well in a few minutes. Yes, do give me a little wine," answered Carmilla, as we approached the door. "Let us look again for a moment. It is the last time, perhaps, I shall see the moonlight with you." "How do you feel now, dear Carmilla? Are you really better?" I asked. I was beginning to take alarm, lest she should have been stricken with a strange epidemic that they said had invaded the country about us. "Papa would be grieved beyond measure," I added, "if he thought you were ever so little ill, without immediately letting us know. We have a very skillful doctor near us, the physician who was with Papa today." "I'm sure he is. I know how kind you all are. But, dear child, I am quite well again. There is nothing ever wrong with me but a little weakness. People say I am languid. I am incapable of exertion. I can scarcely walk as far as a child of 3 years old, and every now and then the little strength I have falters, and I become as you have just seen me. But after all, I am very easily set up again. In a moment I am perfectly myself. See how I have recovered." So indeed she had, and she and I talked a great deal, and very animated she was, and the remainder of that evening passed without any recurrence of what I called her infatuations. I mean her crazy talk and looks, which embarrassed and even frightened me. But there occurred that night an event which gave my thoughts quite a new turn, and seemed to startle even Carmilla's languid nature into momentary energy. Chapter 6. A Very Strange Agony. When we had returned to the drawing-room and sat down to our coffee and chocolate, although Carmilla did not take any, she seemed quite herself again. Madame Perrodon and Mademoiselle de la Fontaine joined us and made a little card party, in the course of which Papa came in for what he called his dish of tea. When the game was over, he sat down beside Carmilla on the sofa and asked her, a little anxiously, whether she had heard from her mother since her arrival. She answered, "No." He then asked whether she knew where a letter would reach her at present. "I cannot tell," she answered ambiguously, "but I have been thinking of leaving you. You have been already too hospitable and too kind to me. I have given you an infinity of trouble, and I should wish to take a carriage tomorrow and post in pursuit of her. I know where I shall ultimately find her, although I dare not tell you." "But you must not dream of any such thing," exclaimed my father, to my great relief. "We can't afford to lose you so, and I won't consent to your leaving us except under the care of your mother, who was so good as to consent to your remaining with us until she should herself return. I should be quite happy if I knew that you heard from her, but this evening the accounts of the progress of the mysterious disease that has invaded our neighborhood grow even more alarming. And, my beautiful guest, I do feel the responsibility, even unaided by advice from your mother. But I shall do my best, and one thing is certain. You must not think of leaving us without her distinct direction to that effect. We should suffer too much in parting from you to consent to it easily." "Thank you, sir, 1,000 times for your hospitality," she answered, smiling bashfully. "You have all been too kind to me. I have seldom been so happy in all my life before as in your beautiful chateau, under your care, and in the society of your dear daughter." So he gallantly, in his old-fashioned way, kissed her hand, smiling and pleased at her little speech. I accompanied Carmilla, as usual, to her room, and sat and chatted with her while she was preparing for bed. "Do you think," I said at length, "that you will ever confide fully in me?" She turned around, smiling, but made no answer, only continued to smile at me. "You won't answer that?" I said. "You can't answer pleasantly. I ought not to have asked you." "You were quite right to ask me that, or anything. You do not know how dear you are to me, or you could not think any confidence too great to look for. But I am under vows, know none half so awfully, and I dare not tell my story yet, even to you. The time is very near when you shall know everything. You will think me cruel, very selfish, but love is always selfish. The more ardent, the more selfish. How jealous I am you cannot know. You must come with me, loving me to death, or else hate me, and still come with me, hating me through death and after. There is no such word as indifference in my apathetic nature." "Now, Carmilla," I said hastily, "are you going to talk your wild nonsense again?" "Not I, silly little fool as I am, and full of whims and fancies. For your sake, I'll talk like a sage. Were you ever at a ball?" "No! How you do run on! What is it like? How charming it must be!" "I almost forget. It was years ago." I laughed. "You are not so old. Your first ball can hardly be forgotten yet." "I remember everything about it, with an effort. I see it all as divers see what is going on above them, through a medium dense and rippling, but transparent. What colors that night has confused the picture and made its colors faint. I was all but assassinated in my bed, wounded here," she touched her breast, "and never was the same since." "Were you near dying?" "Yes, very. A cruel love, a strange love that would have taken my life. Love will have its sacrifices. No sacrifice without blood. Let us go to sleep now. I feel so lazy. How can I get up just now and lock my door?" She was lying with her tiny hands buried in the rich, wavy hair under her cheek, her little head upon the pillow, and her glittering eyes followed me wherever I moved, with a kind of shy smile that I could not decipher. I bade her good night, and crept from the room with an uncomfortable sensation. I often wondered whether our pretty guest ever said her prayers. I certainly had never seen her upon her knees. In the morning she never came down until long after our family prayers were over, and at night she never left the drawing-room to attend our brief evening prayers in the hall. If not that it had casually come out in one of our careless talks that she had been baptized, I should have doubted her being a Christian. Religion was a subject on which I had never heard her speak a single word. If I had known the world better, this particular neglect or antipathy would not have so much surprised me. The precautions of nervous people are infectious, and persons of a like temperament are pretty sure, after a time, to imitate them. I had adopted Carmilla's habit of locking her bedroom door, having taken into my head all her whimsical alarms about midnight invaders and prowling assassins. I had also adopted her precaution of making a brief search through the room to satisfy myself that no lurking assassin or robber was ensconced. These wise measures taken, I got into my bed and fell asleep. A light was burning in my room. This was an old habit, of very early date, and nothing could have tempted me to dispense with it. Thus fortified, I would take my rest in peace. But that night, dreams came through stone walls, and lit up dark rooms and darkened light ones. Their persons made their exits and their entrances as they pleased, and laughed at locksmiths. That night I had a dream that was the beginning of a very strange agony. I cannot call it a nightmare, for I was quite conscious of being asleep. But I was equally conscious of being in my room and lying in bed precisely as I actually was. I saw, or fancied I saw, the room and its furniture just as I had seen it last, except that it was very dark, and I saw something moving round the foot of the bed, which at first I could not accurately distinguish. But soon I saw that it was a sooty black animal that resembled a monstrous cat. It appeared to me about 4 or 5 feet long. It measured fully the length of the hearth-rug as it passed over it, and it continued toing and froing with the lithe, sinister restlessness of a beast in a cage. I could not cry out, although I was terrified. Its pace was growing faster, and the room rapidly darker and darker, at length so dark that I could no longer see anything of it but its eyes. I felt it spring lightly on the bed. The 2 broad eyes approached my face, and suddenly I felt a stinging pain, as if 2 large needles darted an inch or 2 apart, deep into my breast. I woke with a scream. The room was lighted by the candle that burnt there all through the night, and I saw a female figure standing at the foot of the bed. She was in a dark, loose dress, and her hair was down and covered her shoulders. There was not the slightest stir of respiration. A block of stone could not have been more still. As I stared at her, the figure appeared to change her place and was now nearer the door. Then close to it, the door opened, and she exited through it. I was now relieved and able to breathe and move. My first thought was that Carmilla had been playing a trick on me, and that I had forgotten to secure my door. I hastened to it and found it locked, as usual, on the inside. I was afraid to open it. I was horrified. I sprang into my bed and covered my head up in the bedclothes, and lay there more dead than alive until morning. Chapter 7. Descending. It would be my vain attempting to tell you the horror with which, even now, I recall the occurrence of that night. It was no such transitory terror as a dream leaves behind it. It seemed to deepen with time and communicate itself to the very room and furniture that had witnessed the apparition. The next day I could not bear to be alone for a moment. I would have told Papa, but for 2 opposite reasons. I thought he would laugh at my story, and I could not bear its being treated as a jest. And I thought he might fancy that I had been attacked by the mysterious complaint which had invaded our neighborhood. I had myself no misgiving of the kind, and as he had been rather an invalid for some time, I was afraid of alarming him. I was, however, comfortable enough with my good-natured companions, Madame Perrodon and the vivacious Mademoiselle de la Fontaine. They both perceived that I was out of spirits and nervous, and at length I told them what lay so heavy at my heart. Mademoiselle laughed, but Madame Perrodon looked anxious. "By the way," said Mademoiselle, laughing, "the long lime-tree walk behind Carmilla's bedroom window is haunted." "Nonsense!" exclaimed Madame, who thought the theme rather inappropriate for breakfast. "Who tells that story, my dear?" "Martin says that he came up twice before sunrise, when the old yard gate was being repaired, and saw the same female figure walking down the lime-tree avenue." "So he would, as long as there are cows to milk in the river fields," said Madame. "I dare say, but Martin chooses to be frightened, and never did I see a fool more frightened." "You must not say a word about it to Carmilla, because she can see down that walk from her room window," I interposed, "and she is, if possible, a greater coward than I." Carmilla came down rather later than usual that day. "I was so frightened last night," she said, so soon as we were together, "and I am sure I should have seen something dreadful if it had not been for that charm I bought from the poor little hunchback whom I had called such hard names. I had a dream of something black coming round my bed, and I awoke in a perfect horror. I really thought for some seconds that I saw a dark figure near the chimney-piece, but I felt under my pillow for my charm, and the moment that my fingers touched it, the figure disappeared. I felt quite certain that, had it not been by me, something frightful would have made its appearance and perhaps throttled me, as it did those poor people we heard of." "Well, listen to me," I began, and recounted my adventure, at the recital of which she appeared horrified. "And was the charm near you?" she asked earnestly. "No, I had dropped it into a china vase in the drawing-room, but I shall certainly take it with me tonight, as you have so much faith in it. At this distance of time I cannot tell you, or even understand, how I overcame my horror so capably as to lie alone in my room that night. I remember distinctly that I pinned the charm to my pillow. I fell asleep almost immediately, and slept even more soundly than usual all night. The next night I passed in the same way. My sleep was delightfully deep and dreamless. But I wakened with a pleasant, almost luxurious sense of lassitude and melancholy. "Well, I told you so," said Carmilla, when I described my quiet sleep. "I had such delightful sleep myself last night. I pinned the charm to the breast of my night-dress. It was too far away the night before. I am quite sure it was all fancy, except the dreams. I used to think that evil spirits made dreams, but our doctor told me it is no such thing. It is only that a fever or some other malady passing by knocks on the door, as they often do, he said, and, not being able to get in, it passes on." "And what do you think the charm is?" I said. "It has been fumigated or immersed in some drug, and is an antidote against the malaria," she answered. "Then it acts only on the body?" "Certainly. You don't suppose that evil spirits are frightened by bits of ribbon or the perfumes of a druggist's shop. No. These complaints, wandering in the air, begin by trying the nerves and so infect the brain, but before they can seize upon you, the antidote repels them. That, I am sure, is what the charm has done for us. It is nothing magical. It is simply natural." I should have been happier if I could have quite agreed with Carmilla. I did my best, but the impression was losing its force. For some nights I slept profoundly, but still every morning I felt the same lassitude, and a languor weighed upon me all day. I felt myself a changed girl. A strange melancholy was stealing over me, a melancholy I would not have interrupted. Dim thoughts of death began to open, and an idea that I was slowly declining took gentle, and somehow not unwelcome, possession of me. If it was sad, the state of mind it induced was also sweet. Whatever it was, my soul acquiesced to it. I would not admit that I was ill, and I would not consent to tell my papa or to have the doctor sent for. Carmilla became more devoted to me than ever, and her strange paroxysms of languid adoration more frequent. She doted on me with increasing ardor the more my strength and spirits waned. It shocked me, like a momentary glare of insanity. Without knowing it, I was now in an advanced stage of the strangest illness under which any mortal had ever suffered. There was an unaccountable pleasure in its earlier symptoms that concealed from me the incapacitating effects of the malady. This fascination increased for a time until it reached the point when a sense of the horrible mingled with it, deepening, as you shall hear, until it discolored and perverted the whole state of my life. The first change I experienced was rather agreeable. It was very near the turning point from which began the descent of Avernus. Certain vague and strange sensations visited me in my sleep. The prevailing one was of that pleasant, peculiar, cold thrill we feel while bathing when we move against the current of a river. This was soon accompanied by dreams that seemed interminable and were so vague that I could never recollect their scenery and persons, but they left an awful impression and a sense of exhaustion, as if I had passed through a long period of great mental exertion and danger. After all these dreams, there remained on waking a remembrance of having been in a place very nearly dark, and of having spoken to people whom I could not see, and especially of one clear voice, a woman's, very deep, that spoke as if at a distance, producing always the same sensation of indescribable solemnity and fear. Sometimes there came a sensation as if a hand was drawn softly along my cheek and neck. Sometimes it was as if warm lips kissed me, longer and more lovingly as they reached my throat, and there the caress fixed itself. My heart beat faster, my breathing rose and fell rapidly. Then came a sobbing that rose into a sense of strangulation, and turned into a dreadful convulsion in which my senses left me and I became unconscious. It was now 3 weeks since the commencement of this unaccountable state. My sufferings had, during the last week, told upon my appearance. I had grown pale. My eyes were dilated and darkened underneath, and the languor which I had long felt began to display itself in my countenance. My father asked me often whether I was ill, but with an obstinacy which now seems to me unaccountable, I persisted in assuring him that I was quite well. In a sense, this was true. I had no pain. I could complain of no bodily derangement. My complaint seemed to be one of the imagination or the nerves, and horrible as my sufferings were, I kept them with a morbid reserve very nearly to myself. It could not be that terrible complaint which the peasants called the upir, for I had now been suffering for 3 weeks, and they were seldom ill for much more than 3 days before death put an end to their miseries. Carmilla complained, too, of dreams and feverish sensations, but by no means of so alarming a kind as mine. Mine were extremely alarming. Had I been capable of comprehending my condition, I would have invoked aid and advice on my knees. The narcotic of an unsuspected influence was acting upon me, and my perceptions were benumbed. I am going to tell you now of a dream that led immediately to an odd discovery. One night, instead of the voice I was accustomed to hear in the dark, I heard one, sweet and tender, and at the same time terrible, which said, "Your mother warns you to beware the assassin." At the same time, a light unexpectedly sprang up, and I saw Carmilla standing near the foot of my bed in her white nightdress, bathed from her chin to her feet in one great stain of blood. I woke with a shriek, certain that Carmilla was being murdered. I remember springing from my bed. My next recollection is standing in the hallway, crying for help. Madame and Mademoiselle came scurrying out of their rooms in alarm. A lamp burned always in that hallway, and seeing me, they soon learned the cause of my terror. I insisted that we knock on Carmilla's door. Our knocking was unanswered. It soon became a pounding, and then an uproar. We shrieked her name, but all was vain. We all grew frightened, for the door was locked, and hurried in a panic back to my room. There we rang the bell long and furiously. If my father's room had been at that side of the house, we would have called him up at once to our aid, but alas, he was quite hard of hearing, and to reach him involved an excursion for which none of us had courage. Servants, however, soon came running up the stairs. I donned my dressing gown and slippers in the meantime, and my companions were similarly attired. Recognizing the voices of the steward and his men in the hallway, we exited together, and after repeating our fruitless summons at Carmilla's door, I ordered them to force the lock. They did so. We stood, holding our lights aloft in the doorway, and so stared into the room. We called her by name, but there was still no reply. We looked around. Everything was undisturbed. It was exactly in the state in which I had left it on bidding her good night. But Carmilla was gone. And that is where we will end our reading for tonight. Thank you so much for reading along with me. I hope you enjoyed the chapters this time. I think the book is getting quite exciting. I will be back in a little while with more chapters, so if you haven't, please make sure to subscribe so you catch the next chapters of the book. I confess I am quite enjoying myself reading Carmilla. It's a book I know I enjoy, but it's been a real treat to come back to, and I hope you have been enjoying along with me. But for now, I hope you all have a lovely day, night, whatever it is for you, that you are cozy and relaxed. And goodbye,